This time, I would like to ask our fearless Minister of Magic and ALTA President, Don Kennedy, to come and give us an update on ALTA mission and priorities, what they've been doing this year. So let's give it up for Don Kennedy.
Thank you, JT.
Sir.
Good morning, everybody. So I am very humbled and honored and excited to be at this convention for many reasons, but I'll just share a couple. Number one, watching JT's dad, Herschel, who I had the pleasure of meeting several years ago, talk about being a multi-generational employee of the industry. I can relate to that. I am also a multi-generational, as is JT. And just hearing a story about growing up. Thank you. Everybody hear me better now? Oh, good. And thank you for the microphone, sir. Hearing his story about being put to work by his dad, I couldn't relate to that because while JT was being a courier, I was just stealing office supplies from the First American headquarters in Santa Ana. So he was a lot more productive and probably remains so to this day. So kudos to JT. So yeah, really special to kind of be here with another multi-generational title employee. I know there's a lot of us in this room. Number two, what you have here in Oklahoma is really unique. It's really special. I go to a lot of LTA conventions around the country, and I honestly I've never seen anything like this. And I mean that as a compliment. Not just the costumes, the dedication to the theme that I observed last night, but the way that this group has each other's backs is unique. I've heard the word family mentioned several times by my fellow kegs. I'm a keg now, which is really a great honor. I did not expect that. But they really do have each other's backs. And I think the way that the solidarity that I feel in this room, it's not a coincidence that the state of Oklahoma has really thrived in the title industry and settlement industry for so many years. I think it's because of that. I think it's because when you're faced with threats, you really band together and support each other to the great benefit of the title industry in Oklahoma and beyond. So kudos to all of you for that, and thank you very much for having me. All right. Well, with that, I'll commence with updates. Is this the clicker for the? Yeah. All right. Awesome. Okay. So let's just talk briefly about what the American Land Title Association is. Four main points to the organization. And the first one is by far the most important, advocacy. So I can't think of a time, certainly during my career, where advocacy has been more important than it is today at the federal level, at the state level. It's not hyperbolic to say that we're facing potential existential threats to the title industry. So the beauty of ALTA is we're not a very big industry, relative to, let's say, the National Association of Realtors, huge trade association, right? We're really small compared to them, but we make up for it with creativity and hard work. So the American Land Title Association staff in Washington, D.C., they really hit above their weight class, and they have an amazing reach on Capitol Hill, and it's just been earned through a lot of hard work. Super impressive. I'll just give you one example from the ALTA Advocacy Summit, which is in Washington, D.C. every May. Last year, we wanted to host at the Advocacy Summit some of our friends from Capitol Hill. So a lot of representatives and some senators were invited to join us at an event following our day of advocacy. And the problem was a lot of the people we wanted to come, a lot of the members of Congress that we wanted to come, were also invited to the National Association of Realtors event, which was taking place where the Washington Nationals play. So the NAR invited every single member of Congress to their event. They had a sweet 90s cover band, which you could hear from outside the stadium. And so what did the ALTA do? They said, let's just rent out the spot across the street from the stadium. And when these members of Congress are exiting the stadium, we'll just usher them over to the bar that we've rented out and wine them and dine them and thank them for their support. So just an example, I mean, ALTA spent a fraction of what NAR did, but through just cleverness and resourcefulness, they're able to reach the people that we need to reach on Capitol Hill. So just a small example that speaks to how effective the ALTA staff is, a very impressive group. Number two, providing education, hugely important. You think of the ALTA best practices, you think of all the education on fraud and so forth that the association provides. That's an essential part of the charter. Third, probably certainly the most fun part, offering networking opportunities. So we have so many wonderful people in this industry across the country. That's my favorite part about the role that I have with ALTA, is just meeting industry professionals from all over. There's not an industry with nicer people than title people. And then last but not least, creating and promoting professional industry standards. So we've done a good job, I think, as an industry, despite all the differences in our state laws and customs and practices, of trying our best to create uniformity where it fits and where it belongs and where it can help us. All right, so we have some ALTA all-stars. We have one in particular who I'd like to stand up, a true legend of our industry, former ALTA president, Mark Bilbray. Mark, would you stand up and just be recognized? Thank you for all you've done for our industry. It's an honor to follow in your footsteps as the current ALTA president. Any other members who serve on ALTA committees, serve as congressional liaisons, I'd love for you to stand up. No, there's Cheryl, absolutely. Laura, thank you. JT, thank you all for your service. Jennifer, thank you. We really couldn't have the success we have as an industry without your engagement with ALTA. Okay, ALTA strategic priorities. So every year in August, the ALTA board gets together for a couple days, and we just kind of lock ourselves in a conference room and try to look ahead to the next year and say, what do we need to focus on to further the interests of the title industry? And my friend and former ALTA president, Dan Wald, he used to call the ALTA board an elegant design. I liked that phrasing because it's comprised of a really diverse group of perspectives. So you have somebody like me who comes from a large underwriter. And then you have the ALTA president-elect, Richard Welshons, who comes from a multi-generational title agency in Minneapolis. It's a one-state agency. He's going to come with a very different perspective than I am. He's coming from the small agent perspective. Then we have large agents on the board, mid-size underwriters, large underwriters. So all those perspectives have to come together to represent the totality of the interests of our industry. And I think it works really well. The board prides itself on always reaching a consensus. Sometimes that takes time. And we have to spend a lot of time, similar to what we did last night, which is just kind of get together, have some drinks, do silly things together, because what it does is it fosters the ability to be really honest with each other when you're discussing tough issues. And we have tough issues that we're facing. So last August, we got together, locked ourselves in the conference room, and we came up with 3 priorities. Now, in years past, we've had as many as 7, but I said, gosh, if we have too many priorities and we don't have any priorities. So let's try to go with 3. So we narrowed it down to 3. Number 1, champion the title industry and combat regulatory threats. Number 2, promote title insurance as the best way to protect property rights. And number 3, succeed through adaptation and innovation. So pretty broad strategies that cover a lot of ground, and I'll get into further detail on each of these. All right, number 1, championing the industry. So this is something that's never been more important. I think My goal, essentially, if you look at the history of the industry, like JT referenced looking back at a program from the 1950s from this event, if you look back at the industry trade publications going back 50, 60 years, you'll notice a pattern. Every 10 years or so, somebody decides to mess with us. Somebody decides title insurance is a scam. I think even Elizabeth Warren might have tweeted that out this week, as somebody told me. So that happens every 10, 15 years. My goal, and maybe it's just naive, is to put us in a position, and this is going to take years, it's going to take well beyond my tenure, put the industry in a position where we're not facing those threats every 10 or 15 years. So that's going to require constantly championing the value of title insurance. Not just speaking to legislators and regulators, but to consumers as well. Because if we can have every American, or close to it, understand the value of title insurance and have it on the tip of their tongue, we won't have to deal with this anymore. Because it's a distraction. We all have day jobs. We're all here essentially as volunteers at this event. And it would be nice to live in a world where we didn't have to work so hard to fend off threats. But that's why championing the industry will be a priority for I'm sure, the rest of my career. All right, the topic of the day. I'll spend a lot of time on this. So, did anybody watch the State of the Union? I told the kegs this morning that I had to take a long walk after the State of the Union. So that was a surreal day because I woke up thinking, okay, well, I'll watch the State of the Union tonight, like I always watch the State of the Union, and I hope we'll get some good updates, and I'll be proud to be an American, and then I'll go to bed. I did not expect the words title insurance to be mentioned by the President of the United States, because we have flown below the radar as an industry, for better or worse, for a very long time. It's probably the first time in history, American history, that the President has uttered the words title insurance during the State of the Union. So unfortunately, the way he used our industry was in a negative way. And I think the wording he used was, he said, I am going to remove the requirement of title insurance on refinance transactions, saving Americans, what did he say, $10,000 or something like that. $1,000, that was it, $1,000 per transaction. So after I, braced myself and took that long walk, thought, well, how did we get here? So I'll start with kind of what happened as far as I know that day, kind of the events leading up to it. So first we'll go back. The title waiver pilot is not a new concept. It was essentially floating around last year. The idea was floating around as a way to support the Biden administration's housing affordability agenda. So the Biden administration had put out a racial equity plan aimed at increasing affordability, especially for people that have historically had a hard time buying homes. So certainly a noble goal, very noble. But the way they were thinking about going about it was ill-conceived. And that was the idea that on a certain narrow band of refinance transactions that are deemed quote unquote low risk, no title insurance would be required. So this pilot was rumored to be happening. The director of FHFA, Sandra Thompson, was in a hearing before the House Financial Services Committee. She was pressed by several members of the House on this pilot, and it was pretty uncomfortable. She had some tough questions to answer. She didn't have great answers to those questions. And the pilot essentially died. It really died that day. And it died because of a lot of hard work by members of our industry and members of the ALTA staff of rallying support. And this wasn't just support from one side of the aisle, this was both sides. You had people questioning the merits of this pilot, and not just not just the pilot itself, but what are Fannie and Freddie doing, kind of creeping into this insurance space? And so the pilot died. And we thought, great, move on to the next challenge. We'll focus on the attorney opinion letters. But the advocates for the title waiver pilot, they didn't give up. They kept pushing it. They kept trying to get the ear of people, particularly in the Biden administration, because it wasn't really working on Capitol Hill, because ALTA really built a kind of a force field around the Hill. But there was a little opening within the Biden administration for this idea. And housing affordability is a real problem for the Biden administration as it seeks re-election. It's a problem in our country. It's a problem that they understand they need to try to fix or address, take steps to address in order to get reelected. So as the story goes, and I think I have it on pretty good authority, the morning of the State of the Union, someone in the Biden administration snuck it into the speech, essentially. And I say snuck, that's probably a little bit of a mischaracterization, but put it into the speech without consulting with FHFA, that's the regulator for Fannie and Freddie, the government-sponsored enterprises, without talking to Fannie, who were going to be the ones to administer the pilot. So it essentially came as a surprise. And think of Sandra Thompson, the director of the FHFA, who essentially said, we're not going to pursue the pilot, and if we do, it'll be subject to a public vetting. Like all pilots that Fannie and Freddie engage in, they're subject to a very strict vetting process. But she that day got a call from the Biden administration and said, we're doing that pilot. Remember that pilot? We're going to do that because President Biden's going to talk about it in the speech tonight. So she then had to scramble and approve the pilot. And then, of course, President Biden mentioned the pilot in his State of the Union. So let's take one other step back and just talk about part of the reason that this pilot is such a bad idea. And one of the big reasons is Fannie and Freddie are not meant to be involved in the insurance business. They have a very specific charter, Fannie and Freddie. They are designed to create liquidity in the mortgage market. They're purely a secondary market actor, not a primary, a secondary, buying loans to create liquidity in the mortgage market. When they were created, they were given special exceptions that other large companies have to adhere to. They don't have to adhere to those because they're special. They have a very narrow, specific purpose. But for whatever reason, Fannie and Freddie, every 10, 15 years or so, they start to get creative and they start to creep outside that mission. And this is just the latest example of that mission creep. Essentially under this pilot, Fannie will charge a fee. And that fee is associated with the risk they're taking on essentially as an insurer. So the pilot means that Fannie Mae is getting into the title insurance business. And that is a serious problem. And we're fighting tooth and nail to make it as difficult as possible to implement that pilot. So let me turn to the text here of this slide. So under this proposal, Fannie Mae will waive the requirement for lender's title insurance on certain refinances, this is important, with the loan to value ratios less than 80%. So you have high LTV, and your average borrower that's going to qualify for this, guess what? They're going to have pretty high credit, right? You're probably going to have a 750 and above. We don't know the criteria for this pilot yet, but its last iteration, there was going to be a certain credit score required, and of course there was going to be this LTV requirement. So this is supposed to help, if I'm understanding this correctly, this is supposed to help people that are struggling save some money on refinance transactions. So we'll put aside the fact that this is a refinance. This is not a purchase, right? These are current homeowners. This isn't helping new people buy homes. This is, in theory, saving people money on their refinance transactions. that really need to save money, right? The problem is, what we're going to find with this pilot is between that LTV requirement and the credit score of the borrower, this isn't going to help someone on the south side of Chicago or in rural Georgia. This is going to help people in my backyard, Newport Beach, do a cash out refi to put in a new pool, right? I don't think that's what the well-intentioned objective of the Biden administration, I don't think that's who they're trying to help. But that's, when you say this is a low risk refinance, the low risk is going to be to affluent borrowers. So you're saving money for affluent people. Doesn't make sense, doesn't meet the objectives stated by the pilot. Second bullet here, Fannie Mae will charge lenders a fee to cover the risk under a proposed title waiver pilot program. So that fee, they can call it whatever they want. That's insurance. That's covering risk in a space where Fannie and Freddie are not meant to be playing. Fannie and Freddie are not regulated by any insurance departments. We, on the other hand, are heavily regulated by our state level departments of insurance. That works to the benefit, most of the time, of consumers. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, no history in the insurance business, totally unregulated. What could possibly go wrong, right? And when things go wrong, guess who pays the bill? The American taxpayer, right? Fannie and Freddie serve at the pleasure of the American taxpayer. We trust them to exercise good judgment. We've seen what happens when they don't. The financial crisis, that was a bit of a mess. Let's avoid that again. That's essentially, I'm oversimplifying it, but that's our message to members of Congress. We've seen this story before. Don't repeat history. Stay out of the insurance business. We got it covered, guys. Stay in your lane, Fannie and Freddie. That's essentially the message. And then last bullet, of course, that pushes Fannie Mae into a state-regulated insurance business. Not where they belong, not where the charter says they should be. All right, so what can you do? Because I know you're all here because you care about the industry and you want to help. So there's several easy things you can do. Number one, encourage your members of Congress to support bipartisan Protecting America's Property Rights Act. So there is an act floating around the Hill that has bipartisan support that would require title insurance on all loans purchased by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. That would solve a lot of problems, right? The fact that it exists and this act exists and has bipartisan support, I think, is semi-miraculous. I wish I was more optimistic. I'm a very optimistic guy. I'm not optimistic that in this Congress, this act will pass, just because it's dysfunctional. We all know that. It's not a lot's going to happen with the composition of this Congress, so it'll be a tough one, but the easiest thing you can do is just talk to your member of Congress about that act and why it's important to you. Number two, make sure that you join the Title Action Network. It takes just a few minutes. You can do it on the ALTA website. I'll have another slide later in the program where you can get more information on how to do that. But essentially what the Title Action Network does is it allows you to very easily communicate with your members of Congress. So ALTA, just with a few clicks of a button, can send a letter to your member. And since the State of the Union, we've added 1,500 members of the Title Action Network. And in the few weeks following the State of the Union, over 3,800 letters were sent to members of Congress just on the topic of the title waiver pilot. And that puts aside the other topics that I'll touch on, such as FinCEN, such as attorney opinion letters. So it's the easiest way for you to communicate directly with your member of Congress. And you'll often get a letter back. My congressperson is, I live in Los Angeles, and it's Adam Schiff. So I got a reply. Now, it's a form letter, but I got a reply. So they're receiving this correspondence, and as much as you might not think they're listening, they are, because they rely on you to reelect them. So what you say matters. Please, please trust me on that. And your engagement directly with your members of Congress makes a difference. So www.alta.org/TAN. All right, unregulated title insurance alternatives. So unfortunately, it's not just title waivers, it's attorney opinion letters. So we'll talk a little bit about attorney opinion letters. I know that there are certain states, Oklahoma being one of them, I think Kentucky being another, Ohio, where there is a custom and practice of attorney opinion letters being issued and loans with attorney opinion letters being purchased by Fannie Mae. That's existed for a while. The problem is someone within Fannie thought it was a good idea to expand acceptance of these into other markets where they haven't traditionally been utilized as a method of saving money for consumers. The problem with attorney opinion letters is they just don't provide the same level of coverage that a lender's title insurance policy does. And so you're putting a lot of people at risk by suggesting that these should be used in lieu of title insurance. You're putting the lenders at risk. Ultimately, you're putting consumers at risk. Instead of going to a regulated insurance company, if, God forbid, you have a title incident, or what we would call a claim, in an attorney opinion letter scenario, you're seeking relief from a law firm, in theory, or a lawyer who issued the letter. We tried this about 130 years ago, and it didn't work. And that's why title insurance was invented. So we are taking a major step back if we're going to go whole hog with attorney opinion letters instead of title insurance issued by heavily regulated insurers with huge reserves to cover title issues. Putting aside all the work we do to avoid title issues, which I'll get into a little bit later, about how much we spend just on preventing claims so that people don't have to go through the trauma of a title claim. All right, so Fannie Mae recently expanded the use of AOLs even further, and they can now be used in circumstances for loans on condo properties and those subject to restrictive agreements or covenants. So 82% of homes sold in 21 were in an HOA. So this covers a lot of ground. There is a ton of potential for attorney opinion letters to be used in the United States if this catches on. So we are fighting this just as hard as we're fighting the title waiver because it has the potential to do a lot of damage, significantly increases risk to both consumers and to lenders. What can you do? Okay, simple one. Just talk to your customers. So talk to your lender customers, talk to your principals in transactions, educate them on the dangers of these products. What is ALTA doing? So if you go to the ALTA website, there is a comprehensive comparison chart that really shows side by side the difference in coverage between traditional lender's title insurance and an attorney opinion letter. And there are some big glaring weaknesses there, so one of which is fraud and forgery, not covered with an attorney opinion letter. Also, we have frequently asked questions on the ALTA website that you can direct lenders to who are considering AOLs, because what's happening, and I'm hearing a lot about it, is I'm in the agency division for First American, so we have agents that are serving large lenders and small lenders, and they're asking title agents, hey, what about these attorney opinion letters? Can I save my borrowers some money using these? So it's incredibly important, and we as title professionals are in such a unique position to educate our lender customers on the dangers of these letters. All right, so the CFPB, I mentioned Elizabeth Warren. This is one of her babies that was created in the wake of the financial crisis. The CFPB has it out for us too. And they're doing it in the form of lumping us in very unfairly with quote unquote junk fees. So junk fee has not been defined, of course, by the CFPB, and that's intentional because they want it to be broad, so they can capture as many fees as possible, so that they can say, yes, look at all the wonderful things we've done to save consumers money in the United States. So there is a RFI, request for information, expected to come out any minute now, targeting lenders at title insurance. CFPB considers banning lenders from charging home buyers for loan policies. Banning lenders from charging home buyers for loan policies could ultimately apply to purchases and refinances. So the good news on this one is we have a ton of data. And I love our fight because we really have the facts on our side, whether you're talking about AOL's title waiver or the quote unquote junk fee argument. We have so much data and information that we can marshal and use in this fight to paint a picture of why title insurance and settlement is not a junk fee. All right, so this is a good slide. I like this one. This is a breakdown, a dollar cost breakdown that shows how the expenses are allocated in title and settlement. All right, so the median cost of title insurance and settlement services is 0.67% of the purchase price of a house. And that's according to Fannie Mae's own data. So the median cost of title insurance and settlement services is materially less than 1% of the purchase price. And yet, for some reason, we're being targeted. I think because, frankly, we're just not a well understood industry still to this day, despite a lot of good, noble efforts to educate. We're still a little bit of an easy target, despite being a fraction, a very small fraction of the total purchase price. So back to this dollar. So this is cost of producing a title policy. And we're breaking it down as if it was just $1. How much of each dollar is spent to create a title policy? First, the most important part of our whole industry, the employees. So we're spending 52 cents of every dollar on employees tasked in many, many different ways with creating a title policy. Number two, office costs. So this has probably gone down in the wake of the pandemic, but we still need places for people to sit. So we're leasing and buying office space. That's 13 cents. Then you can move over to taxes. That's 4 cents of every dollar spent on taxes. By the way, those taxes go into the government coffers. They're part of the gross domestic product of the United States. So I will get into that in detail in a minute as well. We do get to keep a little bit of profit, 8 cents of every dollar. Imagine that profit. Ooh, sorry, but yes, we are allowed to make some profit. So 8 cents of every dollar we get to keep. Along the bottom, title data and tech. So all of our title plants, all the digitization efforts that people have been talking about in the last couple of days, that's 17 cents of every dollar. Compliance, 3 cents, and I believe that fraction is only going to continue to grow. And look no further than FinCEN. So you have it's really quite paradoxical when you think about the expansion of the FinCEN order. So on the one hand, you have the federal government saying, title insurance isn't worth it, it's a scam. We're going to essentially eliminate it to save people money. And then on the other hand, you have FinCEN. So they're saying, hey, you useless, worthless industry that doesn't provide any value, could you help us prevent money laundering? They're saying that at the same time, okay? It doesn't make sense. And I think the truth is, and they know it, and this is purely political, they understand that the industry does provide critical value. But they just see it as an opportunity. The attack on us really amounts to an opportunity to score some pretty cheap political points, which is frustrating, but it's the reality we have to accept and fight against. So compliance, 3 cents, I think that will only go up as the years go by. Then last but not least, claims or losses, 4 cents. And we all know that if we weren't spending the 52 cents on the employees to prevent losses, we'd be seeing a lot more in that loss area. And those losses, the 4 cents, that represents a lender or a homeowner going through a claim. And we know nobody wants to go through a title insurance claim. It's scary, it's confusing, It can be time-consuming, emotional. We work really hard to help people avoid having to go through that. That's why it's only 4 cents. If we didn't work so hard, if we had just a property and casualty model, people would have to deal with a lot more emotional distress surrounding title incidents that arise on their properties. So I think this dollar tells a good story. Okay, more data. Like I said, we have so much data to support our arguments. So I'll get into this one. This is a chart that shows borrower life of loan charges by recipient. So tracks the expense over the course of the life of a loan. All right, so who's essentially getting the most money when a mortgage is created over the life of the loan? That's kind of the way to think about this. We'll start with number one, the government. So $29,675, or 9% of the total cost, goes to the government in the form of taxes. Second, mortgage-backed security investor, MBS investor, $28,000, 9%. Moving over to the lender, they get $14,000, that's 4.4%. Then the homeowner insurer, 2.92%, $9,000. The government-sponsored enterprise, this one's my favorite. So Fannie and Freddie, $7,705. That's the cost over the life of the loan. That's a lot, right? So I would say to Fannie and Freddie, if you're trying to save borrowers money, look in the mirror. Look at your own fee structure. Stop looking at us. We're the tiny one at the far end, okay? I'm getting ahead of the punchline here, but settlement is last. $891, or 0.28% of the total life of loan charges by the recipient. Almost just a minuscule amount, 0.28%. To the left of that, you have the mortgage insurer, $996, 0.3%. The title insurance premium, 0.42. So if you take the title insurance premium, you add it to the settlement, you're at 0.7, right? 0.7 of the total cost over the life of the loan is related to settlement and title insurance. So really, really a nominal amount. Attacking us doesn't save people much money, and in fact, just puts more risk on consumers and lenders. So a lot of data, like I said, to support our arguments, and we are using this data on Capitol Hill every day. The lobbyists that we send, they share this with members of Congress, and they feed it to them in advance of hearings. And so we have a lot of information that we can provide to help us win. Okay, so a major focus the last couple of years for ALTA is quantifying the economic contributions of the title industry, because they are enormous. So $82 billion in total gross domestic product is generated by title and settlement. So I'll start at the top, and we'll look at jobs supported by title and settlement companies. So 155,000 jobs as a result of our industry. That's a lot. And who employs most of those people, those 155K? Small businesses, many of which are represented in this room. So I work for a big business, but most of the businesses that comprise our industry are small. The vast majority are small. We've got a handful of Fortune 500 companies. Most of them are small businesses, single state agencies. 70% of our workforce is female. So essentially, the administration, the CFPB, the advocates for alternatives to title insurance, they're attacking an industry comprised of small businesses and mostly women. This is also an industry where you can, just with a high school education, make a great living. With enough hard work, if you give a damn, and everybody does give a damn that works in our industry, just about. If you work hard enough, you will make a good living. And it doesn't matter. You didn't have to go to Harvard. You don't have to be an attorney. You can do well in this industry through just hard work. So it just makes so little sense to go after an industry that can tell that story and tell it honestly. 174,000 jobs are supported by related consumer spending to our business. 231,000 jobs supported via purchase of goods and services from suppliers surrounding our industry. So a total of 560,000 jobs can be traced to the title industry in some form or fashion. So what about wages and benefits? That's in the middle here. $13 billion in wages and benefits supported at title and settlement companies. That's a ton. 11 billion of wages and benefits supported by related consumer spending. 19 billion in wages and benefits supported via purchase of goods and services from suppliers. That gives you a grand total of 438 total wages and benefits supported by our industry. That's powerful data. And last but not least, the gross domestic product provided by our industry, 30 billion supported of GDP supported at title and settlement companies, 20 billion by related consumer spending, 32 billion supported via purchase of goods and services by suppliers, for a grand total of $82 billion in gross domestic product. Why go after an industry that provides this much fuel to the economy? I mean, essentially, our basic service to the American economy is to facilitate the efficient transfer of real property. If you attack us and we go away, that efficiency goes away. And a lot of GDP goes away along with it. Okay, this is a map that shows the number of jobs in the title industry by state. So in Oklahoma, 2,600 jobs. Texas is number one with 20,100. California, my home state, 15,900. Florida with 14,200. Pennsylvania and New York up there combining for about 1,500. So we provide a ton of jobs around this country. I mean, think about it. 2,600 alone in the state of Oklahoma. That's a lot. So we just have a lot to be proud of. And, you know, sometimes I'll hear people say things like, well, let's say, I'll use an example say you're thinking about changing your rates, your rate structure, whether it be escrow or title premiums. Sometimes people will say, well, this isn't the best time to do that, right? We're under scrutiny. We should hold off. We shouldn't increase our rates. I couldn't disagree more with that. We're being asked to do more and more work. I alluded to FinCEN. I'll talk a little bit more about that. More and more work with each year. It takes more and more expense to go compliance. We realize efficiencies through technology, but the job of an escrow officer, I'd say it's harder even than it was 30 years ago. They have to do more. And if anything, the technology, although it's helped make things a little bit easier, it's also raised the expectation of speed. So settlement agents have to be faster than they've ever been. So that's a trade-off. More technology, great. The expectation of speed goes up. The expectation of speed comes with stress, right? We work really hard to earn the premiums. We work really hard to earn our settlement fees. And we should never apologize for that. Never apologize for it, and never be shy to ask, to attempt to give ourselves a raise. Well, we heard from the president of the Texas Land Title Association. That state is trying to give every employee a little bit of a ding to their income, and it's not right. But it's the reality we face. All right, some additional research before I move on to a new topic. Collection of taxes. So thinking back to that dollar, I can't remember what it was. It was like 3 or 4 cents of every dollar is paid in taxes. So that all adds up. So $2.4 billion were collected in back federal income taxes. We provide a great service to the IRS. We're tax collectors. $2.4 billion collected in back federal income taxes. $600 million collected in back property taxes. Approximate amount collected per title examined. That's so $200 per examined title, $50 for back property taxes, for the federal income taxes, $5 per transaction for child support. So I think we can all say that we think child support should be paid when it's due. We help collect $55 million in back child support. The industry is a huge public good. Can't say it enough. All right, FinCEN. So I won't talk too much about this, but ALTA has lots of good resources on FinCEN. You've heard my rant about it. It's, I think it all started when a prince in Malaysia took a bunch of the people's money from his country and started to hide it in mansions in Beverly Hills, right? Empty mansions in Beverly Hills. That was kind of the impetus for the creation of FinCEN, which determines the true beneficial owner of a property. So under the FinCEN requirements, you can't just look at the LLC like we used to and just move on with our day. You got to figure out who's behind the LLC. This started small. I remember when it first came out, maybe a decade ago, it was like 2 counties. It was like LA County and Dallas County. Now I've lost count of the number of counties. The requirements keep getting more and more onerous. It's a lot of expense being imposed upon a lot of small businesses to comply with the reporting requirements. And the reporting requirements keep getting more onerous. The penalties, I'll just touch on that. Up to $500 fine for each day of violation of FinCEN continues. Criminal penalties for up to 2 years if you don't comply with this rule. So senior officers of an entity that fail to file a required BOI report may be held accountable for that failure. So this just keeps getting tougher and tougher, FinCEN. This is just yet another reason to join TAN, because we need to correspond with our members of Congress about this ever-expanding FinCEN rule. I don't expect it to slow down, but the greater engagement we have on this topic, the better chance we have to slow it down and reduce the expense and the burden associated with preventing money laundering. I mean, it's the federal government has just decided it's on us as title professionals to prevent money laundering. So we'll do it, because we always do it. we do what's asked of us for the public good. That's a theme of our industry that dates back a long time. All right, so I got into this. I'll skip that past. So let's move on to some other topics. I know I've spent a long time on that. Lauren, how am I doing on time? I want to keep. Okay, good. I want to keep. It's been so impressive. You guys have either been ahead of schedule or right on time. That's pretty darn rare when I go to these. Sometimes it's like, okay, Don, you have 15 minutes. I have to grab a cup of coffee and just ram through 72 slides in 15 minutes. So thank you. All right, so promote title insurance. So this really just means, obviously, everything I just talked about involves promoting title insurance, but this has to do with the specific priority of promoting title insurance as the best way to protect people's property rights. So I like to talk about end traps. Has everybody heard of end traps? I'm just curious by a show of hands. If you've heard of it, raise your hand.
We have
Okay.
2 bills.
You do? Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know it's been a thing in Texas, but a little bit in Oklahoma too? Okay. So I'll briefly describe what these are. Non-title recorded agreements for personal services. That's a mouthful. What these are they're contracts that are recorded in the public record when someone purchases a home. And they contractually obligate the buyer to list his or her property with a certain brokerage when they decide to sell. So really a predatory practice. It's something sneaky. It often is part of an elder abuse. They'll take advantage of someone who's older and maybe doesn't understand what's going on to require them to list their property with a real estate brokerage upon sale. So this is a very predatory thing. And I like to talk about this because ALTA has really taken on the fight and has become a leader in the fight against this. And I would say they didn't really have to, right? So we have a vested interest in the movement of real estate property. That's how movement of real estate. That's how we make our money. But we don't have to get involved with this. If you think about it, we could just let the state prosecutors come around to discovering what a predatory practice is and just rely on them to eliminate it for us. Instead, we didn't do that. We said, oh, this is a real problem. People are being taken advantage of. Let's shine a light on it. Let's come up with a model bill. So ALTA has a model bill that protects people from these predatory practices, and 16 states have already passed versions of that bill that addresses entraps. And so is the model bill set to go?
There's one in the House and the one in the Senate, and they're in each other's houses. They're
Okay.
very close, so we'll see who.
Do you like them both?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Yeah, better to have one than none. So that's great news. And entraps is just another thing we can point to as an industry where we didn't necessarily have to, but we did it. We did it anyway because it's the right thing to do. Because we tend to want to do things to help people. That's why like I alluded to it earlier, there isn't an industry that has nicer people in it. Because I think we're just inclined to solve problems and help people. It's kind of what gets us out of bed in the morning and helps us feel satisfied in our jobs. We solve problems, we help people. This is part of that. All right, another one where ALTA has been really instrumental in shining a light on a problem, and this really does affect, this affects poor people, this has affected people in the rural South for years. And so what is heirs property? Essentially this means that someone died without a will. So we all know that dying without a will, when you own property, it forces probate. It creates a real maze for people to have to go through. The people that are left when someone dies, a parent dies without a will, it can be a real mess. So you think of a situation where you have a homeowner that dies, say it's grandma, without a will. There's going to be several people that could claim an ownership stake in that property based on the fact that they're inheriting it by law. The problem is it can be hard to find those people. You know, let's say grandma had 2 children with her first husband, then that husband died. She had two children with the next husband. Those kids each had kids of their own. There were divorces. Certain people died. You can see how quickly this becomes just a tangled web and how hard it can be to find the people that have very, very valid rights in a property. And what it does is when you're dealing with heirs property situations, people are missing out on opportunities to build wealth. The easiest way to build wealth in the United States is one of the easiest ways is to just be lucky enough to be able to buy your first home. Once you've done that, you've set yourself up. With good luck and good judgment, you can earn money as a result of being a property owner. Heirs property situations deprive that of people. So ALTA has taken this on, has shined a light on it, and is working on legislative steps to solve the issue. All right, here's another one. Another way you can see the theme here. We do a lot of good as an industry. So discriminatory covenants. So we've all seen them. They're vile. They're covenants that restrict people from living in certain places based on race, most often. Obviously, none of them are enforceable based on the U.S. Constitution. You are not allowed to enforce any of these discriminatory covenants. The problem is they're still on the books, right? So there's the temptation to say, well, we need to just get rid of all of these, right? So any document that contains a discriminatory covenant should just be deleted from the record, right, or redacted. We all know that creates a problem in and of itself because we have to rely on other parts of these documents. Even though there's the vile and enforceable part, there are the other parts we actually need to read to do our jobs. So this is a delicate issue that ALTA has taken on to say, we're with you. We want to get rid of these. We don't want people to even have to read this nonsense. But we want to do it in such a way that doesn't prevent us from doing our jobs and making all the great contributions to the GDP, et cetera, et cetera. So ALTA's position. The ALTA is obviously strongly opposed to any form of housing discrimination and is committed to proactively working towards solutions that protect the property rights of all homeowners. Federal legislation also has endorsed a federal bill that would fund the research and study of discriminatory covenants in land records. So this one, I would say, I think this is one where we really, I'll distinguish it from end traps. This is one where we really had to get involved, because if you just let someone who doesn't know the potential harm of it just come in and say, okay, we're outlawing, we're going to order the redaction of all documents that create, all covenants that have discriminatory language, it can mess with our ability to complete our tasks at work. But ALTA has gotten aggressively involved with this. And again, just another example of doing the right thing for the industry and for the public at large. Consumer education. So ALTA has a ton of resources. This is just one example of foreign language or non-English materials that you can use in your businesses to educate consumers. So alta.org/homeowner, a lot of great resources to serve your customers who speak languages other than English. Oh, the ALTA Good Deeds Foundation. So I could talk about this one for a long time, but I'll be as brief as I can. This is something that I think the association should be really proud of. So when Mary O'Donnell was president, she came up with a great idea. And I think her point to the board at the time was, look, we as an industry do a lot of good work with respect to charities. We all know that we are passionate and charitable as an industry. We also support our customers' charities. We've never really quantified that. I mean, can you imagine if we added up the amount of dollars our industry spends to support charities? It would be staggering. We're incredibly charitable. We just have never really fully shined a light on it and tried to quantify it. So Mary's idea was, let's create a foundation, an industry foundation in which we actually identify charities that people in our industry support, and we'll just start giving grants. So none of us had any background with foundations. No one at the LTA had any backgrounds with charitable foundations, but we just kind of winged it and started one. And Mary put together a board. I was flattered to be asked to be on it. And we just started raising money. And we've raised over $1 million since the foundation was created. I believe it was created in late 2020 or early 21. So $1 million in a pretty short period of time. We've already awarded over $800,000 in grants to over 140 different charities. So I know some of you out there probably sit on boards of charities, volunteer, say maybe in a gift drive over the holidays, things like that. If you have a charity that's near and dear to your heart, please nominate it for the ALTA Good Deeds Foundation. It's a really easy way to support a charity that you love. And we tend to focus not necessarily on the big charities, obviously like Habitat for Humanity, wonderful charity that ties in really well with our industry and that they're building homes. That's great. But that's a huge, well-supported national charity. I'd say the same thing with Big Brothers, Big Sisters. We tend to focus on the smaller charities that are really, really instrumental in their communities, but have pretty tight budgets. So most of the grants we've given, they range from $5,000 to $10,000. That can make a charity's budget for 3 or 4 years. That's how small some of these charities are. And I get to make the phone calls to the people, the grant recipients sometimes, and I'd say half the time it ends up with them in tears because the money really makes a huge difference. So I encourage you to donate. You can do that right now if you text Good Deeds to 44321. And I also encourage you to nominate charities of your own for grants, because it's just a wonderful way to help and shine a light on all the good our industry does. So there is the altruistic motivation of the ALTA Good Deeds Foundation. There's a secondary benefit too, and I think Mary, being the smart person that she is, knew this. We can use this for advocacy. So when we give a grant to a charity anywhere in the US, we will note who the congressperson is where that charity sits. And our talented staff at ALTA and our members who go and lobby themselves will tell the member of Congress, hey, our industry helped a charity out in your district. And that matters. That really matters. And sometimes we'll have the grant recipients even go in and talk to their member of Congress. So you have the altruistic benefit of helping good charities, And you have the secondary benefit of using it as an effective way to advocate for the interests of our industry. So it's really a twofold benefit, the Good Deeds Foundation. Uh-oh, did something wrong here. My slides are no longer advancing. Can someone do it manually? All right. Or you can give me some tips on how to reignite this. Thank you.
Don, we were able to do discriminatory language last session.
Oh, you were?
Here in
Okay.
Oklahoma. So we did it the right way, not the redaction, but the rebuking, so it was the right way.
Excellent. I'm not surprised. Everything runs smoothly here in Oklahoma when it comes to legislative action. Knock on wood. Yeah, sorry. I don't want to jinx it. Oh, thank you very much. Oh, wait, no, we're back to the main screen here. How about remote online notarization?
Oh, yeah.
Long ago, right? Of course. You got overachievers here in Oklahoma. Has it caught on, or is it pretty still like under 10% of transactions?
We're still waiting on the banks.
Yeah, that's the story across the whole U.S.
Mary Ann can probably talk to that a little bit better.
The lenders are asking, they're wanting to know where we're at on it, and we do quite a few, but it's only really like the for sale land or cash.
Okay.
So lenders are still requiring wet signatures.
And not all the county clerks are cooperative, right, Jennifer? That is very true, yes. The papering out is the challenge.
Yeah, some of those county clerks can be stuck in their ways, can't they? How many counties are there in Oklahoma? Okay. 77, all right. That's more than my home state. Yeah, questions. Ian, thank you. That sounds about right.
In the first year, there was some very small number of loans purchased by the GSEs that actually had the AOL thing on them, which was very encouraging.
Yeah. I think it was 40. So Ian's saying that the adoption in the first year of attorney opinion letters, for those who can't hear, was really low. The director of the FHFA reported during a hearing that it was about 47, I think she said, for the entire year of 2022. But continue, please.
Do you have a sense of what, that was the last I heard about that. Do you have a sense of what's happened since then? Is there increased adoption? Like, where's that direction going?
Yes, so there has been no data released in terms of adoption of attorney opinion letters since Sandra Thompson said that. But anecdotally, I'm basing it on questions I get from agents, particularly national agents that serve lenders. I'm getting more this year than I was last year, and it's probably 10x as many as I got question-wise. So I'm sensing that there is greater adoption. I know that there's the biggest lender in America, United Wholesale Mortgage, has a program called the TRACK program that really pushes these. So they have a really strong marketing apparatus, United Wholesale Mortgage. So they are having some success, I think, pushing it. I don't think it's great success, but it's success. But yeah, I'm eager to know what it is, because my guess is it's in the hundreds probably for last year. JT.
You're back up.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for asking a question there, Ian, so I could fill some gaps. Oop.
Is that a video?
Wow. Yeah, it is a video. We can skip it, though.
Okay.
Yeah, it's probably the video that's okay. Yeah, let's skip the video. It was going to be a Good Deeds Foundation video, and it was really going to be good, but we'll skip it today. I'm kidding. All right, the last priority, and I'll go through this one quickly because I've been up here for a long time. Adaptation and innovation. So every year we really have to make sure that our members are ready for what's coming. I mentioned digital closings in my conversation just a minute ago with Monica. Here's some data from around the country. So digital or remote closings as a share of all transactions. So in 2021, it was 7%, and we saw a modest increase in 22 up to 10%. And if you look further back, and I'm just going from memory here, I think the increase from 2019 to 2020 because of the pandemic was something like 400%. But it's still, I think in 2020, there was still only about 3 or 4% of the total closings were digital. I'm really proud because I think that our industry is ready for this. To Monica's point, it's not us, it's really the lenders who haven't hopped on board. But 61% of businesses conducting digital or remote closing. So 61% of businesses in our industry did conduct a closing that was digital in 2022. So that to me says we're ready. So when the lenders do jump off the fence, which eventually they will, we'll be ready for it. And I think that's super important for us as an industry because we do know that no matter what age, whether it be millennials or Gen Z, in-person interactions is important, but millennials and Gen Z, they do have an expectations of sort of digital convenience, right? They I think to a lot of people in that age group that go through hopefully a home ownership event or buying a home, I think sometimes they're just puzzled by the amount of paperwork, right? Like, can't I do this on my iPad? And the answer is yes, you can, but we're just not fully quite there yet, and we need our friends in the lending industry to hop on board. So share of businesses offering remote online notarization, 51% in 2022. That's up from 30% in 21. So we as an industry are on pace to be really ready for digital closings. Digital payment methods. So we've heard a little bit about this. We heard some update from Colorado this morning. I thought that was really good advice on good funds laws. It's a big deal. So the good funds laws in the United States around the country are outdated. They're not ready for these new payment rails, particularly RTP and FedNow, these brand new rails that we're just kind of learning about and understanding the mechanics of. The laws need to catch up. The good funds laws need to catch up. So ALTA has done state law research, looking at all the existing good funds laws. And then, of course, as they always do, they've come out with a model law to enable modern payment rails to be accounted for in good funds laws, and so consumers will be protected. So this continues to be a major focus, and there's a really talented ALTA employee named Elizabeth Blosser who's done a great job in this domain. Okay, this is a map. The green, these are states with a good funds law or regulation. The yellow, lender funding requirements only. And then the purple, ACH is expressly committed. So I think we see probably about 10 states where ACH is specifically and expressly permitted in the law. Let's see where Oklahoma is on this one. In this one case, you're not overachieving. Sorry. You're not perfect, right? I thought you were perfect. I'm actually a little relieved because I live in a state that is so far from perfect. And I think we just got our remote online notarization bill passed last year. And it has a provision where it doesn't go into effect for another 6 years. So it's just, we're confused out west. But yeah, Oklahoma, not quite on the board yet, but sounds like it's coming. Digital payment methods, good funds. So just a list of resources. We've got a good funds law chart. This is all on the alta.org website. A great document on ALTA use cases for payment rails, a comparison chart showing the different fund transfer systems, good funds legislation, the model acts that we've come up with, FAQs. So plenty of resources as you pursue a good funds legislation in Oklahoma. Fraud, my friend and colleague Mike Savas gave a great talk on fraud yesterday, so I will not spend too much time on this topic, although it is sadly remains as relevant a topic as as any that's ever discussed at any LTA conference. Seller impersonation, that's the big one. At first it was kind of just happening on vacant land. Now we're just seeing it happen on any type of land. So this is the hot fraud of the moment. I'm sure Mike went through red flags, things you can do, so I'm not going to harp on that too much. Oh, shoot. Oh, there we go. Wire transfer fraud, of course, continues to be a huge problem. $400 million in losses in 2022 alone. ALTA has great tools on its website, best practices, resources. I think the one thing you can do and that I think will make a difference in your firm is do a phishing test, right? So in my company, gosh, it happens a lot. Every few weeks, we'll get a phishing, a fake phishing email sent to us, and if you click on it, your name goes on a list at First American, and for good reason. We had an incident that was painful for us, our customers, our agents. So we take that real seriously, and I think it's our greatest vulnerability in all of our companies is people, right? They want to click that link. So find out who's clicking that link within your firm and train them up or ship them out because you don't want to go through it. All right. Cybersecurity, ALTA has an information security work group of talented people sharing ideas on how to protect people's money. And of course, the need to evolve and adapt. Always important to use caution. Email, phone calls, text should all be considered suspect. Got to change behaviors and practices and embrace new technology and security protocols. Just stay current on all that stuff. I'm sure Mike covered it in detail yesterday. ALTA can be really your de facto HR department if you don't have one. Training resources, HR library, DEI, videos, you name it, they've got it. If you're a member, please make use of all these resources. As I said before, join the Title Action Network. That's alta.org/TAN, or you can text TAN to 52886. I'll leave that up there for a minute for those who want to text right now that aren't TAN members. That is the simplest thing you can do to help us in this fight. All right, Oklahoma, very important state. A lot of influence in Congress. Key leaders, we have James Lankford on the Finance Committee, tax policy, 1031s. There's Mark Wayne Mullen on the Indian Affairs Committee on Native American lands. And then in the House, one member on the Financial Services, that's Lucas, FHFA, CFPB, FinCEN, all those topics covered by that Financial Services, very important committee in the House. And then one member on the Ways and Means Committee, that's Hearn, covering tax policy and 1031s relevant to our industry. Political engagement, awesome engagement with this group. I mean, the amount of money raised by Okie PAC last night was just phenomenal. I mean, I couldn't believe the generosity in this group. Truly inspiring. So I wish I could have a video sent to all the LTAs around the country to see what you did last night. It's unique, and you should be proud of it. Also, a lot of support for ALTA in this room. So 3 Oklahoma ALTA members are congressional liaisons. We've got 77 members of TAN already, hopefully more after today. 3 Oklahoma ALTA members donated $13.50 to TIPAC in 2024, and last year it was 9 for a total of $3,200. So for those that donated last year, please consider doing so again, and for those that didn't, never a better time to support TIPAC than now. What does TIPAC do? That's the Title Insurance Political Action Committee. That money is used to support candidates that support our industry. It's that simple. So please donate if you're a TAN member. All right, the ALTA rebrand. So we rebranded. We unveiled that last October. I think we were still using a logo from about 50 years ago. But now we've generated a new logo, modernized the look. The website has also been redesigned, very slick. So take a look at that if you haven't already. We're down to the wire here, but upcoming ALTA events. May 6th through the 8th, Washington, D.C., the Advocacy Summit. I think that's my favorite event because that is the one where you're most directly impacting the industry by talking to your members of Congress. What we do is we gather there, we kind of train all the attendees up on how to speak to members of Congress and their staff. We give them talking points on the relevant issues, and then we turn them loose on Capitol Hill and actually go and march through the halls of the Senate and the House, meeting with members of Congress and their staff. And they really do listen, and I'm always uplifted and surprised by how much they already know about our industry. So we're in a good spot, I believe, as an industry. I think we will withstand all these challenges. I really have no doubt, but it's going to be a long, tough, at times annoying fight. But we need your help. So consider going to the Advocacy Summit, if not this year, then next year. And then ALTA 1 down in Orlando, always a super fun event. If you haven't been to one before, this is a good year to go. Any questions? All right, well, I really thank you all for your attention today. It's been a pleasure being here, and thanks for all you do for the title industry. I appreciate it.